when we have a strong reaction to something in the moment, like when we get triggered, it's never about that thing that's happening in the moment. I even said this about like the whole Will Smith slap. I know everyone's putting all their stuff on that, but it's never about like what's actually happening in that moment. It's about something that was encoded and embedded a long, long time ago. And so with EMDR, it's helping you access that like much, much earlier thing that is at the root of why you're getting triggered.
Welcome to the Share the Wealth Show, where minority professionals can learn to escape the racial wealth gap and catapult themselves into abundance. Your host, Nicole Pendergrass, grew her net worth from being negative to multiple six figures. Join her on her investigative mission to expose secret strategies of the wealthy so we can all have the tools needed to build the life and legacy we were created to possess. Now it's time for the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again for another episode of the Share the Wealth Show. This is the show where we discuss strategies to build, grow, and protect minority wealth. One facet of wealth that we have not discussed yet is mental wealth. And I know our expert today, Mr. Rich Jones, is going to dig in on that with us. But he does have some personal finance experience and expertise as well that we'll dig into. But Rich is the host of the Mental Wealth Show and executive editor of Find More Balance, which is a multimedia platform dedicated to holistic wellness for high performers. He's also a master's track and field athlete competing around the country in the long jump. By day, Rich works in diversity, equity, and inclusion at Google. Welcome, Rich. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have to say, too, Rich is an old colleague of mine. And I guess that's not really colleague, is that? We went to undergrad together. So I don't think that's
old classmate. Old classmate.
Yeah, old classmate. I don't even know if we had the same classes.
Yeah, you know what? We weren't even in the same class. We were schoolmates.
Schoolmates. College mates, however you say it. But yeah. So we, follow each other on social media. So I've seen a lot of what he's doing. And when I decided to launch the show, I said, you know what, Rich would be the perfect person to have on here to definitely bring a different perspective into the types of guests that I've been having so far. But I'll let you just go ahead. Rich, tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us about what made you decide to start Paychecks and Balances, what that was about, and your transition to what you're doing now.
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me on the podcast. I've been in just a huge season of healing, a season of change. It's just been busy in the best way possible, but also in the most challenging way possible. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But I'm a podcast host, producer, strategist. That's what I do outside of my day job when I'm not working in DEI. And yeah, I became a master's track and field athlete again. And I say again because in college I ran track. And I ran till about 2007, and then life started getting in the way. I fell into some cycles that, over a decade later, I was finally able to break. And I decided after I had quit alcohol a year before, so that was July 1st, 2020, I decided on July 1, 2020, you know what, I've reclaimed this freedom in my life. I've broken this just generational cycle. I've thought about track and field every day, essentially, of my life. And I never thought I'd be able to do it again. But here I am with the space to finally train and to also have the financial resources to be able to train and do this at the level that I'm doing it now. Because I'm realizing a lot of the personal finance lessons are coming into play when I think about the money and how I'm going about traveling. I'm not someone who hates credit cards. I am getting these points. I am paying the balance in full every month. But I'm getting that 3x points for travel. I'm getting the 3x points for business ad spend. So I've really been learning through this holistic journey how to create a lifestyle that works for me and that allows me to achieve more of what I want in life while also still having financial freedom and not creating debt for myself.
Yeah. Oh, so I definitely wanted to interject into there before you continue with your story, because one, I've seen your recent video posts with you're doing some of your long jumps and practicing and things. And people, he's not too shabby for taking 10 years off. He's actually doing really well. I'm super impressed because I used to be in shape. I guess I still am a little bit, but I'm definitely not doing the same kind of things that I was able to do even 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
congrats to that. Congrats to that. That's super impressive.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that. I mean, I was off basically almost 15 years and I shocked myself. And the thing is, like, the muscle memory came back pretty fast. It was a matter of a lot of the stuff that I used to neglect before. I can't neglect that now because I'm a lot older. So like all of the core work, and this is even just a metaphor for life and the journey I've been on too, just like all of like the core strengthening, because I had a point where I kept straining my lower back and it's because all of the surrounding muscles weren't weak. So I've been learning like how to just optimize everything, considering my age, considering that I have a lot less time while also having a lot more responsibility.
Yeah.
And this track and field journey is part of how I came to the realization to go from paychecks and balances, which was more heavily focused on personal finance and career advice, to talking more about holistic wellness, because I've seen what following good advice and taking good actions financially and professionally has done for my satisfaction, not just in terms of dollar amounts and job titles, but also the things that I'm able to have in my life. And if I didn't make some of these decisions along the way, particularly while I was learning a lot from the guests that we were having on the podcast. So I never got into personal finance wanting to be an expert. My thing was just to share my experience, share my mistakes, and hope that a younger version of me doesn't make the same mistakes. And so I feel like right now, this is pretty much just the evolution of that, where I went from talking about personal finance and career specifically to quitting alcohol and getting back into track and learning about, cryotherapy and getting back into ice baths and all of these different health and healing modalities that people need to be put onto. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there that we need that we don't know that we need. And so I'm trying to put more people onto that.
And you know what? And that's almost like the same revelation and reason that I started this podcast, because there's so many strategies out there that we don't realize we should be implementing up front. And even on the financial side, to give us the freedom to explore these other things in our life and have a holistic life. Because if you're worried about paying all the bills, if you don't have certain things lined up, you could be a high earner and still be living paycheck to paycheck because you're not managing your finances responsibly and not building up something like a legacy for your kids or your family or whoever you want to leave something for. And so to even encompass that, mental wellness is extremely important, but you also have to have that freedom to even be able to not stress about the money, right? Like, does that make sense? That's part of why I started this as well. And so, okay. Oh my goodness. You said so much already that I wanted to dig into. So one, I don't know which way I should go first, because you said ice bath. As soon as you said ice bath, I cringed. I know I've heard about it so many times, how beneficial it is. I don't know all the details of benefits, but I just shut off as soon as you say ice bath.
I know.
Because I can't see myself doing it. So really quick touch on why people should do ice baths.
For me, it's really about increasing circulation, getting the bad stuff out of the muscles, getting fresh blood and oxygen in. That's really the gist of what it is for me. And then also, when the skin gets below certain temperatures, there's endorphins and other chemicals that are released that make you feel good. And so, like, for me, it's a big part of my recovery routine, just given like how much pound I'm putting on my joints and my muscle, just given like how much I'm jumping when I'm out on the track.
Okay. Because the science in me automatically, because I know heat is supposed to increase circulation, because to me, heat makes things more active and move faster. So to me, in my head with the science, I'm thinking heat would make your circulation go faster, but cold also makes your circulation go faster.
Well, yeah. I mean, so first there's the reduction in inflammation, which is probably the first thing, which is why most people think of cold therapy. But the other part that I didn't mention is, usually when I do ice baths or cold plunges, I'll usually do a sauna beforehand. I realize this sounds real bougie, but I care about my wellness. And so I'll do like a sauna for like half an hour, get warmed up, sweat it out. And then I'll switch over to the cold plunge. And sometimes like I'll go like back and forth. So that's more of the circulation. And this is stuff that like I've just learned from like years of just like training and Also in the process of becoming a certified wellness coach right now. I might even be one by the time this episode is out. So like, I'm still trying things out and figuring out like what actually works and what's a myth and what might just be the placebo effect.
Okay. Yeah, that going back and forth even sounds more painful than just the cold bath by itself. But you are trying it and I am not. So you have the evidence. And I always say, go with the people who are actually doing the thing and not just like somebody who's talking about it. So when it comes to cold baths and saunas and interchanging, listen to Rich because he's done it. Don't listen to me because I haven't. In any case. Another thing you mentioned, I want to dig into kind of the timeline of what you were going through. So I know you started with paychecks and balances, and you mentioned something about the credit cards and using the credit cards for points, but paying them off in full every month. Can you touch on that as like a financial strategy, and what other strategies have you learned throughout your tenure of running paychecks and balances? So I know me and my husband actually just opened credit cards to start doing our monthly expenses and paying that off in full. So we just set that up.
Yeah. It's been kind of crazy because I'm starting to shift things around, and I think life in general, we kind of move in cycles where whether it's every year we evaluate how we're doing things, or every few years we're evaluating how we're doing things. But as far as the credit card side of things, it took a few years of running the business before I was comfortable to get one. I want to say I've had it for probably about a year now. And it's one of the Chase cards. I'll have to pull it out to get the name off of it. But for me, there's the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is my personal credit card, which I do know off top because I'm using that one every day and it matches my lifestyle. What some people can't get over with this particular card is that it comes with, and well, it used to be a $400 fee. Now it's like a $500 fee. But when you get like the annual $300 travel credit and you take advantage of some of the other perks and benefits, which for me aren't a stretch because they're naturally part of my lifestyle, I end up, or I'm getting 3x points for doing things that I would naturally do. So it's not like I'm spending money that I wouldn't normally spend to try to get points, which I think is the mistake that some people make, is they start trying to find reasons to spend money to accumulate the points, where I'm just spending on things that I would normally spend on, and then just paying that in full at the end of the month.
Okay.
So that's how I handle the personal side of it. On the business side of it, it's very similar, where I'm paying in full every month, but things like, getting 3x points on ad spend dollars or social media advertising, which were things that I was using pretty extensively in my business. It made sense to have that, being able to get 3x on travel for any business trips, conferences, things like that. And it was also helpful to have a credit card that was like the one place for all of the business expenses, as opposed to having them spread across multiple cards. Which I remember when I first started out, I had like an account within my personal account that was like my separate business account. And it was a few years before I realized that wasn't the way to go about it. So for each card, they both fit my lifestyle, and I'm just getting like double up points on each of them. I mean, I've probably got the equivalent of two round trip flights right now, like good round trips. I'm not talking about from San Fran to Seattle. I'm talking about like two good round trip flights, and that's just from doing what I would naturally do, but also having the rigor to make sure that I'm paying it in full every month.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. And that's one thing I haven't done with my business expenses yet. So I do have business expenses on a credit card to help build credit, but it's one of those credit cards, and it's actually good. It makes you pay it off in full every month, or you can do weekly or however often you want to pay it in full. And you get a certain amount of benefits or points. I have to check again on that. But that's just one card, and I haven't really transferred. I've transferred some recurring expenses there, but I don't use everything for that. Like, I don't know. I need to find that one good card and use that to help with my points and to build the business credit as I'm paying it off.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, and you made me think of something else too, because I was like, what is this other card that I have? And it's the Chase Business Preferred Inc. And I am not an endorser or affiliate for any of these cards, but I mention this because they're both Chase cards. And so the points I can transfer across because they're both within the same network. And
So even
so,
for your personal and business card, because
yeah,
they're both Chase, you could transfer them.
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And so what also might be unique for me is that like this is all like the business I'm talking about is like my side hustle. So I'm still W-2 by day. I don't have any W-2 employees. And I understand when you have like some of those additional overhead expenses, that kind of changes the picture a little bit. So I want to acknowledge that I probably do have a little bit more freedom in terms of how I'm doing this because I do have my finances primarily covered by my day job.
Okay. All right. So if you have your day job, so I know you are not an advocate of the ethos that you have to like everyone should be an entrepreneur and you
Hate
need
it.
to quit your job.
Hate
Like
it.
I know I've saw you post about that, and I do believe that it's definitely up to the individual and what you're doing and what your goals and your what you want to achieve in life and what effect and impact you think you're having with your W-2 if you want to keep that. So is that why you're staying? Because your diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that to me already sounds like very meaningful, like that has a purpose behind it. Do you ever plan to eventually leave that position, or how does that fit in your overall what you're doing with your side hustles?
I can't believe you asked such a fantastic setup question because I almost did
Nobody
leave.
at your job is going to hear. Nobody at your
Yeah.
job is going to hear. Okay,
Well,
go ahead.
well, so that's the thing. I almost did leave.
Oh,
So
okay.
this role is so I work in retention and progression. Our team is now called Stay and Thrive. I'm not officially speaking on behalf of the company. Blah 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 blah. But
Yeah.
I'm essentially kind of like an internal career coach / advocate for folks who are experiencing the workplace differently, which is most commonly Black, brown folks who look like us, also in indigenous. So it is the most values driven role and meaningful role that I've ever had in my career, but it is also the most emotionally draining role that I've had in my career. And then that makes sense, right? Like something that is highly meaningful is also going to be draining, even if you're deeply passionate about it. And I got to a point after my first few months in this role where I started having panic attacks. Basic tasks like sending emails and following up became really difficult. And I ended up having to take a mental health leave at the beginning of September, or rather, I chose to take a mental health leave. I felt empowered by those around me to take one, which I'm also thankful for because you don't see that in every work environment.
Yeah.
And I ended up being out from September through end of November, and I thought about leaving. And during this leave, that's when I learned that, I've been living with CPTSD, even back while I was at school, like all this time,
Wow.
everyone who's known, like I've had CPTSD this whole freaking time. And
Wow.
and just thinking about like what that meant for old habits. So like, that's when I open and say, like, I've been on this journey of exploration and healing. It's like, I've been unpacking a lot, but I got to a point on the leave where I went on site on campus because Google is like that. It's basically a campus. I went on site for a doctor's appointment. Then I left the doctor's appointment. And then I said, let me stop by the gym upstairs. And I said, oh, the gym has everything I need for my track and field training. And then I stopped in the cafeteria on the way out. And I was like, oh, healthy meals. And I had this realization of like, yo, why would I leave? My job is actually helping me achieve a life goal. And I realized that the reason that I wanted to leave, it actually had nothing to do with the job itself. It was all of that deeper internal work that I hadn't yet done that I needed to do on myself. And so once I started figuring some of that out, it was like, yo, like, like the structure, I've also got like ADHD symptoms going on. So it's like the structure. I'm like, I like this structure. I like that I can kind of figure out how the game is played and I don't have to rely on the strangers and the internet and follows and likes and things like that. I enjoy that, but I also enjoy having this creative outlet, and I enjoy being able to, have vacation days and things like this, so I can travel and compete. So, like once I had that space, and that was the most important part. Like once I had that space, it was a no brainer. But I couldn't have come to that conclusion if I didn't take that 3 months off.
Okay. So how did you go about that process of doing that deep internal work? Because that's not easy, looking in the mirror and trying to decide or really dig deep and look at what you have been doing and what are some what are some habits that you have that don't serve you anymore, but that have just maybe been ingrained since your childhood, even outside of any diagnosed issues? Just doing internal deep work by itself is very hard. And if you're not, did you go to therapy or did you do this all yourself? How did you handle?
Oh, it's been everything. I mean, I started seeing my therapist, Leona. I started seeing her in August 2017. It was after a previous relationship had ended. I had one of those, I keep ending up in the same situation moments. And the common denominator is me. And so, and so I started seeing the therapist, but like also at that time, people didn't see publicly is how much behind the scenes I was struggling with alcohol. And so like getting a hold of that took years, and I was achieving, I'm winning awards. People look at you, Rich, you doing all of this. And behind the scenes, I'm struggling. And a lot of us are, you don't see it on social, but that's what ends up happening. And I just had that moment where I forgot what the prompt question was.
The prompt question was, what deep internal work, like how did you work through that? I guess you said you had a therapist, but what other things you used? Okay.
Got it. And so, I'm seeing this therapist for really probably about 4 years before I starting to kind of break through the surface. And sometimes it just takes time, when it comes to getting through a lot of this stuff. And what I didn't understand that I understand now is the level of layers. And so I did talk therapy for a number of years, and I think that it was helping, but there were still cycles that I wasn't able to break, most particularly around my relationship with alcohol. But one thing that changed aside from quitting drinking was I also started working with a leadership coach in 2020 around the same time. And I'm still working with that same leadership coach. Shout out to Kayvon this very day. So I had someone who was kind of acting as in like a coach mentorship capacity, who was also a very big part and still is a very big part of my support system. And so that made a big difference. And then, I have a, massage therapist who was, so somebody who was a podcast listener heard me mention back pain, reached out to me on LinkedIn and, mentioned that they were based in the Bay Area. They were a physical therapist. They ended up helping me get my back together. And then when I thought about getting in track and field shape, I went back to this person. They were the first person I thought of. And for the first several months I started training, this person was helping me get back up and running again to be able to compete at this level. So that person also became part of my support system. And then, a lot of it in terms of like the habits, it really is just like starting to understand like what my different triggers are, and starting to coming to terms with a lot of like the shame and the guilt. And some folks talk about attachment styles, and essentially learning like the way that I grew up. And here's a revelation that I had recently that blew my mind. And I wouldn't have had this revelation had I not gone through this type of therapy called EMDR. And you'll have to ask me about it. You'll probably have to ask me about it again. I had this revelation that the way that I thought I grew up isn't actually how I grew up. And I realized like the way that I recalled it, yes, there was, every family has their stuff, but it was like nothing in comparison to what actually happened when I started like really uncovering and processing these memories through this EMDR therapy, which is a lot more intense because you're essentially going back in time to process the memories that you couldn't process then because you were or that you couldn't adequately process then because you were trying to survive. And so, it's been a continuous like years of this, and I just got to a place where, look at that. I took a leave in 2021. Here I am, we're looking into May 2022, and like I'm just like getting clarity on it. And I won't lie, the process is freaking exhausting. It really is, because what people don't tell you is one, what it's like to be alone with your thoughts, which I learned from being on that leave, but also how exhausting it is to constantly think that like you got to the root of the issue only to go, wait, there's more, wait, there's more, wait, there's more. And that's what it's been the past few months, where like I've really been getting to like the root of things. And this is like the core of like what the mental wealth is. Like now I have an appreciation, not just for like, and not an appreciation and self-compassion for myself to like realize this wasn't just a me thing, and that like the things that I've experienced were set in motion before I even existed. Like, you know, this is like generational stuff that a lot of us are going through. So, I mean, for me, it's been like the support networks. You know, cutting alcohol was the best decision, one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. I'm not back out here running track without it. And I think even just becoming an athlete again, that was a huge part of my identity. And that part of one's identity doesn't have to leave just because school ends. You know, I competed in New York City in March, you know, won the bronze in my age group for the long jump. And I've been training for less than a year, you know, and the most beautiful thing that I saw at this meet was 60 and 70-year-old Black men looking healthy as running faster than me.
Nice. I love it.
Like that is wealth type stuff. I mean, like seeing people, and you know, if you're out there doing that, like you are committed, like to look back, like that is the lifestyle. And so I think a lot of times where we get stuck is we're picking up habits and tactics as opposed to thinking about our holistic lifestyle, because you don't get into that type of shape and maintain that over the years if you're not living a congruent lifestyle.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And that just like such a fundamental part of being holistic. Like people need to plan for the whole picture, not just one piece here, one piece there, because then you don't have that balance, and balance is a real thing. Like, and sometimes you're maybe focused on one area, maybe sometimes focus on another. It's not completely all the time, like equally cut up percentage wise and what your focus is on. But if holistically you still have these things in place and you get reprieve from some other areas of your life because you're focus, like you have something else going on over here. So I love that. And I love thinking about now, like planning for the future. That's what the whole thing is about. That it's like planning for the future. No one's going to be here forever. Everyone has their point, but I want to live as long as possible. And I want to be functional. Like I want to be able to move around. I want to be healthy. I want to eat right now so that I can, you know, just feel more energetic and abundant later in my life. So I want my physical health and my financial health and my mental health all to be great, right? You need all of those. So really quick, what does EMDR stand for?
Yep. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Okay.
So I'd encourage folks look up EMDR therapy. It'll do the internet will certainly do a much more thorough job of explaining it, but just know that the gist of it is accessing memories that are at the core of trauma, because typically when we have a strong reaction to something in the moment, like when we get triggered, it's never about that thing that's happening in the moment. I even said this about like the whole Will Smith slap. I know everyone's putting all their stuff on that, but it's never about like what's actually happening in that moment. It's about something that was encoded and embedded a long, long time ago. And so with EMDR, it's helping you access that like much, much earlier thing that is at the root of why you're getting triggered.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that too. Okay, so one more thing I do want to touch on. What made it? Was it part of your wellness discovery and working on yourself that made you transition from Paychecks and Balances to the Mental Wealth Show? And has the Mental Wealth Show launched already?
Yeah, it's been out and I've been taking breaks. You know, it's kind of interesting. So I made the pivot in October of 2021. While I was on the leave from work, and it's a lot of because of what I'm saying, like all of this information that I gained and like the habits and things that I've picked up, it's been super powerful. And so it was so powerful that I was like, you know what, given where I am in life and given the things that I want to talk about going forward, now feels like the right time to change the name of the show. And most importantly, it felt authentic. You know, it could just because I thought about like where I was and like where I'm going. And since then, things have continued to evolve. And so that's why, you know, there's a Mental Wealth Show podcast, but then there's a parent brand that's Find More Balance. And that is like the holistic wellness side of things. So For me, personal finance is still very important. In fact, it's one of the main pillars of on Find More Balance, but personal finance is still very much a part of that. But I'm realizing as I'm going through my own holistic journey that like concepts, myths, and self-limiting beliefs that I had that I didn't even know that I had. So even like seeing, I'm not sure about your experience. I know some of the listeners can probably appreciate this. You may be able to, but if you've seen, I mean, the older we get, we're starting to see people pass away, even people from our class.
Yeah.
And the more like I would just see, I feel like I've seen a lot of Black men pass away, like from different illnesses, sicknesses, I mean, violence and stuff aside. So to me, like I'd already started having this feeling of like, I mean, F it. So this was before I started getting my stuff together. It's like, F it, I might as well eat this way. Like I might as well enjoy it while I can, because the good times are almost over. And I didn't even realize that I was thinking that way, like until I went to that meet, and I'm like, yo, like these, like it doesn't, they're out here, they're enjoying it. It doesn't have to end. It doesn't have to be over. It doesn't have to be over. And that's when I had that realization. So like, that's something like a belief that like I didn't even know I had until I saw the example. But isn't that always how we works? Like we only go for what we see.
Exactly. And that's a good thing about people like you and what I'm trying to do as well, just being out there. And even though we might be struggling through some things, but we're trying to keep going, we're pushing through, right? And I'm vocal on social media. I know you're vocal on social media because we want people to see the options. We want people to see that there's someone else doing this and that you're not alone, or that it is possible, and to just kind of bust limiting beliefs in that manner. So great. Like you're doing fantastic. And you have like all your speaking engagements, your coaching, the wellness. I think the whole thing is fantastic what you're doing.
I appreciate it. And, I'll put it this way. The fact that I'm able to talk about this publicly is a testament to therapy working. Like this is like the stuff that and I'm still going through it. It's not suddenly easy. Like, I still have my moments, there's things and people associate grief with death, but you can also grieve what never was and what may never be after you realize some things,
Yes.
So like it's very necessary work, because some of these habits that I couldn't kick, things like just getting like excessively defensive, or like shutting down emotionally, like things that were impacting my relationships, like things weren't going to get better for me if I didn't do this work. And so doing that work for self first, for me first, not for my partner, not for anybody else. If I didn't do this, like for me first, like things aren't like this right now.
Yeah. And I definitely, everyone needs to work on themselves, but I feel like I have those times when I want to sit down and think deeply and work on myself and really internalize. And when because I really don't often have that quiet time, especially with two toddlers running around, and I'm running back and forth, and I'm going like, as soon as I get home from work, I'm doing real estate stuff, and then I'm on calls and I'm on this and that. It's like always something, right? But when I have some quiet time, and it's like, oh, I should do some like self work. And then my mind blanks and I don't even know like what I should be thinking about, or what questions I should be asking myself, or what, I don't know what I should actually focus on trying to work out. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I need to read some more books on self-help.
So I wouldn't call this a hack, but something that I like to do. Fridays are my wellness days. So it doesn't matter that like I go into work Fridays, I'm either going to go to the sauna / cold plunge. I'm going to get a massage. I'm going to do something for me. It will be scheduled into my workday. Even if I have to cancel meetings, like I know I look forward to every Friday, because I know that I'm going to do something for me. It could be a yoga class. So it might just be like, starting with that, and just like figuring out like, what do I enjoy? Like what moves me? Like, what do I want to do this time? And I am not a parent, but I would guess that like you spend a lot of your energy thinking about everybody else. but it's important that you at least, I mean, even if it's like an hour, like, you know, it could be going to the nail salon, but like there has to be some time that like you
Yeah.
carve out like that's just for you. And once you get consistent about it, you train everybody else around you that like that time is you. Like people will like, nope, where's my it's mommy wellness time. Like people will
Yeah.
just like know that,
Yeah.
you know.
And especially, I mean, a 2 and a 4-year-old is kind of hard at first, but as soon as this becomes consistent, then I'll be like, it's mommy wellness time. And they'll be like, okay, we gotta, maybe the 4-year-old will go, but the 2-year-old still will probably try to climb on me or do something or
Yeah,
cry
see
and say, I
that's
want
what I
mommy.
mean.
But
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like I have no true idea. So
no, it's okay. Like it will be, as I do it consistently, it will become a part of what they know as they grow in. So it will be a struggle at first until they get used to it. But in any case, oh my goodness, Rich, this has been so great. Like, I'm glad that we were able to catch up. I'm glad you agreed to take time out of your busy schedule and pour into our listeners today, because mental wealth is such a critical part of the holistic picture, like we've been discussing. And I really, really thank you for coming on, because this is something we did need to talk about. Wait, don't go yet. Have you been looking for a way to get started in real estate investing, but you just don't know how? You need the Launchpad. It's brought to you by my company, Norvest Holdings. And the Launchpad is a free guide with a ton of resources I've compiled to help you invest into your first real estate syndication. It includes terminology, book resources, video explanations, all the information that you need. Don't know what a syndication is? I got you covered. How to find a good operator, how to even tell if a deal is good or not without having to know how to underwrite it all. It's all in there. The Launchpad is designed to help launch you into the next stage of your investing career and get you invested into your first multifamily syndication as a passive investor, meaning you can be a landlord and own a piece of a large apartment building, but still go about your day-to-day life without having to stop and learn every single detail about what's under the hood and how it all works. The link to the guide is in the show notes. Make sure you sign up today. Again, this is a free resource and guide. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me. Now let's finish up the show. So I'm going to ask you the last couple of questions that I ask every guest. First question is more about personal finance investing type of stuff, if you have any type of thoughts on it. But Warren Buffett said that diversification is protection against ignorance. What are your thoughts on that? What did he mean? And do you agree or why?
it's funny because I'm thinking about how I agree, but then how I also do something financially that does not agree with that. So diversification to me is not putting all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. And so most commonly for me, that is through index funds, whether it's through my taxable investing account. I have a robo-advisor account set up through Wealthfront. I choose to use a robo-advisor or artificial intelligence-based service because I just kind of want to set it and forget it. And so that's worked well for me. And then I've also gotten into cryptocurrency a bit. So I'm starting to increase the amount of exposure that I have there. I have paused for a minute, even though they say buy the dips and all of that. I have paused. And that's another thing for me. I don't like to try to do too much at one time. So if life is getting really busy, like I will pause how active I am in some other areas versus like ended up making some bad financial decisions because I was feeling pressured and trying to do too much at once. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I feel like what I was going to say where I don't diversify is a lot of folks who work in Silicon Valley. We have access to RSU stock from publicly traded companies. And I've been letting it just accumulate from all of these vest events that I've had where this stock money or where this stock has gone into my portfolio. And they say like, never keep all your stock, all your Google stock just sitting there. Like, what if the company tanks one day? Probably not going to happen. But some would argue that, so some would argue that I should cash out some of that stock and reinvest it so I can further diversify as opposed to having all of that money just in Google.
Yeah. So you're specialized in Google, but then diversified with some of your AI investments, your AI stock buys. So you're doing a little bit of both. That's fun. I think that's a smart way to do it.
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's super, super easy. Set it and forget it. That's what I go for.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Next question is, have you played Boardwalk before?
Oh, it's been a minute. And it's funny you say Boardwalk and I think of McDonald's.
Oh, you know, why did I say, did you play Boardwalk before? Jeez Louise. But you knew what I was talking about.
You meant Monopoly.
Did you play Monopoly? Yes.
Yes. Wow. That's
Why
wow.
did you play Boardwalk before? Jeez
But I
Louise.
knew. But I knew.
You knew. Yeah. So the question is, even though it's been a while, so Boardwalk we know is the most expensive property. And then Baltic Avenue is on the other side of that. That's the cheapest property. So if in your Monopoly strategy, if you were to play now, which property would you prefer and why?
Expensive or the least expensive?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. And am I living in it? I gotta ask these.
I don't know. Are you living in it or is it an investment? Well, this is a wealth building podcast. It's more about investing and growing your money. So it's probably an investment.
Yeah. I mean, if it's an investment and the less pricey property is in an area where there's potential and it makes sense, yes. But otherwise, the splurgeologist in me wants to buy the higher, like the higher cost property because I assume it already has all the amenities and everything else. I want to say I'm biased because I know that I like nice things. And I'm like, I'm like, I want to see that nice house first. I can already imagine like what's in that property.
Yeah. No, I love that word splurgeologist. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, it's just and that's it's funny. Like the way that I would have answered that question before, I think I would immediately jump to like the lower price, but like as I learn more that like I like nice things and I pay for convenience and like I see the value in intangible things, you know. NFTs, people spending all sorts of money to get into NFTs or to invest in different crypto projects. You know. So if the value is there, it might be worth it because that value at that moment could potentially be nothing compared to what that value could be down the road. I mean, that's the market, that's the game, right?
Yep, that's the game. Oh, you know, I almost forgot to show my because my camera's low, but look.
Yes, self-care is the revolution.
I wore this today just for you. This shirt is actually from Vernita. You remember Vernita?
Yeah.
She's another one of our college mates. Undergrad, and she has a line called Hot Sauce, the America's Hot Sauce. It's like she wrote an article and it's about Black people being the definitive hot sauce. On America.
I read that about her experience from Town and Country.
Yeah. But in any case, thank you so much this has been a really fantastic episode. I love talking to you. I'm definitely gonna keep in contact more with you. I won't stalk you, but you'll hear from me a little bit more.
It's all
we need to keep the lines of communication open. But how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, if they're interested in coaching services or whatever it is? How can they either follow you or reach out to you to connect?
Yeah, so I am on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Pay Balances. I'm a bit more active on Instagram. I'm actually phasing out how much I'm on social media because it was negatively contributing to my mental health. But otherwise, the website right now, it is at paychecksandbalances.com. In the future, it will be at findmorebalance.com. So you should be able to get there either way. And I have, a contact form, multiple ways to get in touch with me on the website, whether it's having me to come speak, do a live podcast episode for your company or organization. I've done that. If it's putting together a workshop, if it's podcast consulting, all of that you can get to right now from paychecksandbalances.com.
Nice. I love it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you again so much. Again, this is Rich Jones. I am your hostess, Nicole Pendergrass, and you have been listening to the Share the Wealth Show. If you've gotten any value from this episode, which I know you have, I need you to share it with your friends and make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes.
Did you love this episode of Share the Wealth Show? Be sure to connect with Nicole by following her on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. If you picked up any of the gems that were dropped by today's guest, make sure you not only put them in your bag, but if you know of someone who would benefit from this information, don't keep it to yourself. Share the wealth and make sure to leave us a rating and review. We'll see you for next week's episode. Subscribe so you'll be notified.